Rams fans, welcome into a brand new episode of the Rams Report by Chat Sports. Today, we're taking a look at one of ESPN's latest articles where they broke down all 32 teams' off seasons and whether or not they were a success. We're going to see what they had to say about the Los Angeles Rams, and I'm going to kind of react to it and give my opinion on it. But let's go through. They had three kind of questions, I guess you could say, that they asked each team and of their respective team beat writers. So our Rams ESPN beat writer, Sarah Barshop, who, in my opinion, does fantastic work. Shout out to Sarah. She handled all of these questions for us. And they were as follows. Did the Rams hit their free agency goals? One thing ESPN heard. That's kind of why I said they're kind of questions. And then the last one, the biggest remaining question for the team as they head towards the NFL draft, as they kind of round out the free agency portion of their offseason. But let's start with whether or not Sarah feels that the Rams hit their free agency goals. Here's what she had to say on that question. The Rams entered the offseason needing to address the cornerback room. Absolutely, they did. As 4 at the position were pending free agents. It's true. Los Angeles totally remade the room, trading for McDuffie and then signing him to a record-setting contract and signing Jaylen Watson, to a 3-year deal. With Darius Williams announcing his retirement, there will be significant turnover in the room next season. So, I would say that we achieved our goals. Seems like Sarah Barshop, even though she doesn't actually directly say it, would also agree that we achieved our main goal of fixing the corner room in the offseason. We're going to break down how in just 1 minute, but if you agree that the Rams went out and accomplished the task of revamping the corner room, there's still work to do, absolutely, but we are in so much of a better position than we were even just 2 months ago. If you agree, like today's video. Hit that thumbs up button for me and let me know where the Ramily stands on this question, because I think the answer is absolutely yes, and proof is in the pudding, baby. Look at this new depth chart. Trent McDuffie. I mean, isn't it just nice to look at versus what our old corner depth chart looked like? I think so. I absolutely think so. No disrespect to some of the guys that were there last season, but Trent McDuffie being at number 1, Jaylen Watson being at number 2, knowing that we have 2 guys we can trust to hold it down with Quentin Lake in the nickel, who was our best defensive back last season, in my opinion, when he was fully healthy and ready to rock. That's a game-changing unit. This is a different ballgame, especially because safety was never a huge weakness. I think Cam Kinchins played well last season. He continues to develop. He's still a young player. Cam Curl, we just rewarded him with a big payday. If he can be the guy that showed up in the divisional round against Chicago on a more consistent basis, and hey, that contract is going to look like one of the best in the NFL. The value there is going to be absolutely enormous. I think this 5 is set. But what is not, in my opinion, is depth. You look at the guys beyond the starting 5, we don't have the backups that we need yet. We don't have depth in that room. And you need depth at the NFL level. You can't just have a good starting group and call it a day if your goal is to go out and win a Super Bowl. We're going to need to continue to support that room. And that'll come on draft day. Not in round 1. Like, I do not expect corner or safety in round 1. I don't even think it's going to be a round 2 thing that they address. Maybe. Could be. But I think realistically, you're going to see that starting in round 3, the Rams look to add guys in the room who are not expected to be the franchise corner. That's Trent McDuffie. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. But guys that you can develop and trustworthy depth. Guys that you know can step in if injuries do pop up with your starting 5 in the defense, across the defensive back room, across the secondary. But let's focus in on McDuffie a little bit more. So this was the one thing ESPN heard, and it's about Trent. The Rams heavily invested in McDuffie, with the draft capital required to acquire him and the contract extension. When asked whether the deal adds any sense of responsibility, McDuffie said it does. When teams think of the Rams, they can look at me and be like, okay, that's what it means to be a Ram. McDuffie said that in his introductory news conference. That's what this team is about. And I absolutely agree. Because I think that's maybe the most underrated thing about Trent McDuffie. And hey, you could throw me in with that as well. I've tried my best to convey it, but I haven't done as good of a job as I need to of conveying the idea that you aren't just going out and giving up what the Rams gave up in a trade for Trent McDuffie and signing him to the big money deal that they signed him to because he's a phenomenal football player. Of course, he is a phenomenal football player. But you're also betting on a great person, on someone who led the locker room in Kansas City, on someone who, and Chiefs' younger corners, which they had multiple of, Josh Williams, Noel Williams, these guys that were under Trent, these guys that were a little younger than him and that learned from him, they speak about him in such a high way. Jaden Hicks as well, you think you could throw in that group. These guys that looked to him, and they talk about it as if like he is a 10-year vet in the league. He's 25. But the way he leads, the way he goes about his business, he is a true professional, and it has that effect on other guys of like, when you're at work and there's just somebody at work, I feel like every workplace has this, that guy that is so good at his job that you're like, damn, I really want to be like Jimmy. Like, man, Jimmy's always killing it. Like, if I could just be exactly like Jimmy, if I could do what Jimmy does, I know I'm going to be all right. If I could be around Jimmy, if I could copy the way Jimmy does things, the way Jimmy goes about his business, Trent McDuffie is Jimmy. Trent McDuffie is the Jimmy of the Rams locker room, the guy coming in now to set the example for the younger guys that we just talked about that you still need to add as depth. Look at the puzzle coming together. Now you have, for the young corners, you're probably going to add at least one, maybe even two. They have a guy to look to. They've got a leader in the locker room from day one that they can model after, that they can trust, that they can go to when they've got questions about, hey, like, how do I do this? How does this work? How do you defend this type of route? Trent's been there. He's done that. He's been to multiple Super Bowls. Like, who better to look to in this room? Even though he's only 25. And that's the other huge benefit of it. He's a 25-year-old. He'll be able to play that role for you for like a decade. So much value in Trent McDuffie. A truly game-changing cornerstone piece of this defense, in my opinion. Let's move on to question number 3, which is, in their minds, the biggest remaining question, which is why we left it for last. What is the biggest remaining question of the offseason for the Rams? According to Sarah Barshop, it's who will be Matthew Stafford's backup quarterback. And we've talked about this a little bit on our show in the past. Jimmy G, she says, has held the job the past 2 seasons, and Coach Sean McVay has made it clear he'd love to have the quarterback in LA again. Of course, she's referring to something we've talked about on this channel before, that press conference quote where McVay outright says it. Jimmy G, we'd love to have him back. But she also continues with Garoppolo could be mulling other offers, especially after Mike LaFleur was hired by Arizona. Stetson Bennett IV is also on the roster. Indeed he is. There's a lot of options here. As you approach what I think you could call kind of the QB2 conundrum that the Rams have right now. You've got 4 different ways of going about this. Number 1 is, I would say, maybe the most vanilla option. Just bring back Jimmy G. Just roll back the quarterback room exactly as it's looked for the last 2 seasons. Re-sign Jimmy G. Bring him back. Call it good. Do nothing exciting. Change nothing from last season. Do I have any problem with that? No. If that's what the Rams want to do, okay. Like, it's worked out fine the last couple of years. Is Jimmy G an exciting backup? No. Is Jimmy G a perfectly fine backup? Yes. I'm okay with that. Option number 2, I am not okay with. Roll with Stetson. This doesn't work, in my opinion. It is entirely unlikely that the Rams will do this for a couple of reasons. Number 1, Stetson Bennett has never taken a snap at the NFL level. I find it incredibly unlikely that Sean McVay would put him in a position to have his first snaps be incredibly meaningful ones in a season in which the Rams are expected to win the Super Bowl. That's a lot of pressure to put on a guy who you've never in the past trusted to even be in position to be QB2. That's the long and the short of it with Stetson. He's never taken an NFL snap. I think there's a pretty damn good reason why. He's never even been put in position to take an NFL snap, at least not in the regular season. At the end of the day, I know I kind of sound like a Stetson Bennett hater. I think he's valuable as depth. Maybe he could one day step up to being QB2, but I just don't think they're ready for him. I don't think the Rams want to put Stetson Bennett in a position where he could potentially be on the field. They haven't wanted to do that for the last 3 years. I don't know what would have changed to make them feel good about that. Next up, make a trade. And we'll talk in a minute about different options that you could go in as far as trade goes. A number of different guys that you could potentially make a move for. I think there's a number of young quarterbacks that are available, that other teams are interested in shopping, and you could come away with one of them. Lastly, draft somebody. And this, I think, is maybe the least likely option. I think the Rams would like, or not least likely. Yeah, I think maybe it is least likely, other than rolling with Stetson Bennett. It's right there, one or two. I don't think the Rams are entirely likely to spend at least a valuable draft pick on a quarterback. Maybe you see that on day 3, but at that point, is that guy even ready to be QB2? I think you're just back in the Stetson Bennett situation at that point. So I think the most likely options are number 1, which we've talked about as being quite boring, and number 3, making a trade. And that's a lot more interesting. So let's analyze a couple trade candidates that the Rams could go after if that's what they want to do. J.J. McCarthy. We talked about him in our video, and you guys didn't like it, and I understand. I know. Some of you did. Some of you were in on it. If you didn't watch that full video, I understand. I understand. But the premise at the end of the day is trading a 6th-round pick for J.J. McCarthy. Would you be willing to give – if J.J. McCarthy was a draft prospect in this year's draft, everything we know about him right now, would you draft him in the 6th round? I would. At the end of the day, I think if your answer to that question is yes – then you should make that trade. I would draft J.J. McCarthy in the 6th round if he was a draft prospect right now, knowing everything that we know about him. And therefore, I would trade a 6th-round pick for him. As would Anthony Richardson. Another guy who, again, has he shown it at the NFL level? No. Has it been anywhere close? No, not really. There's been some flashes. There's been some moments. But consistency, not there with Anthony Richardson. Could he figure it out with better coaching, though? I think it's worth taking a chance. It's worth taking a swing, even though I don't know if he necessarily fits into the mold of what McVay has worked with in the past for quarterbacks, but maybe it's what McVay wants to work with in the future. I think that's kind of an interesting question. Will Levis fits better into the mold of guys we've worked with in the past. More of a traditional pocket passer, offers you a little bit of a floor of mobility, but at the end of the day, again, another guy who hasn't worked at the NFL level to this point, a guy who has had comedically bad moments at the NFL level to this point. Could you take a chance on him? Could you take a chance on coaching him up? Again, you start to see a theme with these guys, right? Like, I know J.J. McCarthy, not interesting to a lot of you because he wasn't good at the NFL level yet, but neither are any of the other options. Joe Milton, at the end of the day, he's had really frustrating moments at the NFL level. He's had one really fantastic game at the NFL level that got him traded for high-value draft capital. But one of the most unbelievable arms we've ever seen, ever. Not to sound like ML football, but I think that's just kind of the truth of it. And then lastly, Tanner McKee out of Philadelphia. I have him on the list because I know he would get brought up in the comments. I think the problem with McKee and also with a guy like Tyson Bagent, who you could also kind of throw in here, I think Philly and Chicago, in the case of Bagent, are going to be looking for like 4th-round draft capital for these guys because they, unlike our top 4 guys, have actually had some pretty solid moments on an NFL football field in the regular season. So it's tougher for them to move off of them for the 5th, 6th-round draft capital, ideally maybe even a 7th-round pick, that we would be looking to send to acquire one of these 4 backups. I think these are your 4 most realistic options. So I want you to pick one for me. If we had to trade for somebody, I'm taking away your other options. We can't re-sign Jimmy. Rolling with Stetson, no. Pick one of these 4 guys. Who do you want? J.J. McCarthy, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, or Joe Milton? Which one of those? And look, I'm not saying that that's what the Rams are going to do. But if it had to be, if that's what the Rams were going to do, which one would you want? JJ, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, or Joe Milton? Give me their initials in the comments. Let me know which of these guys would you want to see the Rams trade for. And remember, we're talking about sending a 6th-round pick for one of these guys. Nothing that really matters. The 209th overall pick. We'll see ya. Goodbye. we'll take a chance on one. Let me know, though. What do you think? And what did you think of ESPN's review of our offseason in general? You think they're on point? You think they're off base? I think they're pretty much right on point, to be honest with you. I think their corner assessment of what we did in the corner room is very accurate. We flipped things, but we've still got a little bit of work to do. They recognize Trent McDuffie as a foundational piece of this team and the investment that the Rams have made going beyond just what he offers you on the football field. And I think they also accurately recognize that one of the biggest issues for this team to address, something we've already been talking about on this channel, is who's going to back up Matthew Stafford in 2026. A lot more to come on that topic and many others around the Los Angeles Rams. We'll be here to cover them all offseason long, so make sure you subscribe, and let's go Rams.